Hi everyone, I'm Phil Preston. I'm the co-founder of Purpose Ignition and Impact Hour. And you've got a great conversation coming up with Prosper because we're diving into purpose. And you might think you know purpose, but maybe you don't. Maybe there's something you'll learn from our conversation. So I implore you to keep watching because we're going to talk about a lot of stuff.
Now, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your premier destination for exclusive insights into the journeys of remarkable individuals that are shaping the world. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we're going to have a guest whose story is as transformative as it is inspiring. Now, Phil, how are you doing today?
Yeah, look, I'm great. Prosper. The world is it's sunny outside, and with everything going on in the world around us, it's nice just to be in a not a good place, enjoying the weather that Australia gives us.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you something, man. The world is going to be what it is. I mean, the last 5 years gave us a whole different perspective, and now something new is coming up. So I think it's like a 5 year interval. You get a bit of
Well,
a rest, and then whew, something comes up.
I was going to add, yes, I think you could almost regard what we've done in our lives to date as training for this moment, right?
Oh, absolutely. And especially the last 5 years where most of the stuff that we've always known and done were deemed non-essential. So I think it's time for us to refocus and start looking at, wait a minute, is the world we are holding on to the one that is going to be existing in the next coming years or so? Because I think that's why a lot of people are suffering, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are wondering, what are we going on about? Yeah, it's one of those things when you come to the Online Prosperity Show, anything can happen and anything is a fair go. But our guest today, Phil Preston, is one remarkable character. I want you to imagine having overseen maybe $50 billion in investments. I know this is not your everyday thing, but this is what Phil was looking at. And he only realized that financial success alone doesn't equate to fulfillment. So you could have all the money in the world, but if you're not actually fulfilled or doing the things that actually bring you joy and happiness, it's all going to be amounting to nothing. So I guess today Phil Preston has faced this very crossroad, and he left behind a comfortable corporate career, and now he's embarked on a quest to align profit with a purpose, leading him to become a globally recognized expert in innovation, transformation, and change. So if you're looking for a speaker who can help your people handle uncertainty and change, or you need a skilled facilitator that can actually ensure sessions run smoothly and deliver results, Phil is your man. He actually has expertise across a wide range of industries and audiences, and he's got that steady hand who helps you reduce event risk and get the outcomes that you want. And that steady hand was actually used in a personal story. He's going to be telling us how he helped deliver his second child there. So in the interest of obviously getting to know everything that he has done, that's the reason why we've brought him in. And Phil's journey doesn't just stop there in the $50 billion world. He's actually co-founded Purpose Ignition and the Impact Hour, which is a sustainable business event series. And he's also authored Connecting Profit with a Purpose. And beyond all of that, he is actually a seasonal singer-songwriter, and he always jokes about being a proud Tasmanian that migrated to Australia. And it's things like that that just makes and completes the men that we have in front of us here. Now, Phil, I could go on and talk about things that might not even relate to your journey right now, but you left a perfectly good job.
Yeah, so I was in that role for about 17 years, or in various roles. So I came out of school and university in Tasmania, and at the time, not much going on in Tassie. So you look, as I would say, overseas and moved to Australia or moved to Sydney, and started, just that normal corporate grind where you're in a junior role, you start working your way up. And then about 10 years into that journey, I became quite senior in an investment team. And then another 6 or 7 years later, our team was managing or overseeing $50 billion of global investments. And that was really exciting. We thought we were pretty good. We had stresses and strains in that role. But I would say since having left that, and I'll explain why I left that shortly perhaps, you realize once you start living in your community and finding out a bit more about what's going on around you, you think, well, that role I had wasn't actually that stressful and wasn't as much of a strain as what I'm seeing in other places and around me. And I found just having that new perspective was great. But I think leading up to that, I'd set all my goals in life around being comfortable and, one day having a good retirement. And it was when I never actually got there. I never had millions in the bank. But once that became within sight, that's when I started questioning, why am I here and what am I doing with my life? And it was really challenging. We sometimes laugh about having a midlife crisis or an existential crisis, but this was real because, you're nearly age 40, and are you on the right train track? If you're stuck on one train track and you really want to get off, you've got to make a real effort to get off. So yeah, I chose that route with no plan, just threw my job in and figured out what would happen next.
Absolutely. And I would suppose 17 years is quite a lifetime. I mean, if you were a little human, that would have been almost being an adult while, the amount of
Yes.
time that you were working in there and things like that. What was your typical day working in an investment firm? Because I'm supposing you guys were obviously looking at the highs and lows of investment, stock markets, and things of that nature.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy because your performance is really visible daily. When the investments you have are priced every second of the day, people can see whether you're underperforming or overperforming. And there's a lot of things outside of your control in investments as well. And that's pretty relevant for right now. You cannot predict things, and all you can do is just manage your business the best you can and observe risks and look at opportunities and try and get them in perspective. So the day we had would be, I would typically start work pretty early, typically get to work around 6:30, 7 a.m. And we had half of our team of analysts in Hong Kong, half were in Sydney. And then at about, I think it was 9 a.m. our time, we'd all get on a link up to update each other on what had happened overnight. And then that would set the agenda for what we needed to do during the day. I think one of the interesting things about the investment world is you actually don't want excitement. You want boring sometimes. Boring can be really good when things are going to plan and trending the right way. That is actually good. When things get really exciting like they are now, they can be devastatingly good or sometimes devastatingly bad, exciting. So just trying to identify, I guess, the real risks that you're facing. For example, in the dot-com crisis, which was around the 2001 area, just, you focus on investments that have good cash flow or companies that have good cash flow, not the speculative ones that have no cash flow, but someone thinks they have a huge valuation one day. You've just got to get the basics right.
Absolutely. And obviously you're at the pulse of the economy. So you literally would know by the time you go back home, maybe what sort of world will be living the next morning. What sort of pressure did that put on you as a person and somebody who, like you said, your experience and your performance was measured daily?
Mm. I think it's like a lot of roles, though. I mean, although the mechanics might be different in this role, everyone has stresses and strains. And the way this would manifest itself would be, again, similar, I think, to other roles in that I was leaving home pretty early in the morning, typically between 5 and 6. And I was finishing at a reasonable time, but I'd be home at 6:30, 7 p.m. because I lived a little way out of Sydney. And therefore I'd probably see my kids for half an hour or an hour before they went to bed. And And that in the industry I was in, that was a pretty normal lifestyle. No one would have really questioned that. And I say that because once I threw in that job and tried to figure out what I was doing next, I was 24/7 with my wife and kids. And it was a bit of a shock. It wasn't just the weekend. It was every day of the week, and that took a bit of adjustment, even though it sounds strange. When you've had this thing, you've probably spent more hours in the office than maybe you've spent with your family every week. There's a big adjustment going on, and you start to figure out what is more important in your life. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been to Launceston, Hobart, and just driving around in Tasmania. In Launceston, especially, there's only one traffic light that I saw, which means there's not that much hecticness that happens around here. If I just go outside my house, I have to go past 3 or 4 different traffic lights before I even catch Woolies or Coles and things like that, which really shows you the stark difference in the hecticness and the amount of people that are around. What was your comparison when you, like you said, came across to Australia?
Yeah. Well, I moved to Sydney from Hobart when I was 21, and yeah, it was just like great to be in this place where you could be quite anonymous, because growing up in Hobart, everyone knew each other. My parents, for example, used to love reading the court report in the paper, like, oh, who's been charged with drink driving today? So, I thought, I don't want to turn up in the paper one day and everyone you grew up with, everyone sort of knows your business. So I couldn't, in some ways, wait to find that anonymity. And, being modestly ambitious, getting to the bigger city was a good thing to do. So yeah, going from Hobart, which was maybe a bit like Launceston, only a couple of traffic lights at the time, into this big city. I really loved it because I was in a company where there was a lot of other people from other places around Australia, like Townsville and Newcastle. It wasn't just all Sydney people. So actually having some people from Sydney in the office and many who were from outside the office, we had a pretty good social group going. And yeah, we lived up the nightlife of Sydney and did all those things that you do when you're young and stupid.
Absolutely, because I wanted to sort of put that sort of difference in the open, because maybe as time went on, you did mention kids, you did mention family, you started
Yes.
maybe craving that slow pace of life, because work was fast paced, even at home would be fast paced as well. Right now it's school holidays and I can actually start breathing, but when schools open, it's like a whole factory, just trying to move people around and bring them in and out and things of that nature. Could that have also maybe contributed because your factory settings were nice, calm, whereas, yes, this needed to happen, which was all the hecticness plus the added stress of work as well?
Yeah, that's a really good observation because I lived in Sydney for 6 years. So I got married probably in year 4 of that, I think. And then in year 6 of living in Sydney, we decided to try and buy a house, and we ended up buying a place an hour south of Sydney on the edge of the Royal National Park, much cheaper, and a lifestyle that was like village-like. And yeah, no traffic lights in that town. And so I've lived in this area between Wollongong and Sydney for a bit over 30 years now. And I just feel though right now it's building up more in the area. But I would say I agree with you. Being able to go out of the busyness of work in the middle of Sydney and come home to I guess a village tree-like nature atmosphere was absolutely beautiful.
I can imagine, and things of that nature. But getting back to work a little bit, you were working with investments, and did you ever get to maybe speak to the clients, or were you just working behind the scenes, making sure that everything doesn't just implode on itself?
Yeah, good question. So our main clients were, I'd say, what you'd call internal clients. So when you're running an investment research function, you're serving the people who are the portfolio managers that are then making the decisions. So you're evaluating whether these investments are good, bad, or high risk or not. And so we had internal clients, but we also had external clients we'd be supporting. So they might be superannuation funds, for example.
Mm.
And so every now and then we'd have to explain how we do what we do and give them comfort that we're doing things well. The other interesting thing was, and this happened about 18 months before I actually decided to leave the industry, I got involved in a project which allowed me, and there was three other people involved, where we could go around different parts of the company and say, look, we need to be more aware of environmental, social, and other issues and economic issues going on in our investments. And if we can be better at understanding these factors than our competitors, then we'll make better investment decisions. So our group was going around talking to all the other investment divisions. We couldn't tell them to do this or buy in, but we could try and influence them and see if they would see the logic and the incentive in doing it. And it was really part of that experience which struck a light in me. So I love that challenge of facilitating a conversation and love the challenge of trying to exert influence and help, help lead people to a better place if it's genuinely a better place. So I think there was a little bit of that that's now carried into what I love doing every day.
Absolutely. And obviously, had that not happened, maybe it would have taken you a little bit longer for you to actually transition and then work into this. But I'm always intrigued about people that invest and people that know what to do, and the Warren Buffetts and all the people that seemingly have, what do you call that? Slowed or delayed gratification and putting stuff away, hoping for a rainy day and things like that. What do those people eat for breakfast, Phil? I just need to know what to focus on. Maybe it starts from there.
I think it's being able to, I don't know what they eat for breakfast. I can't tell you exactly, but it's being able to see through the noise is what really counts. So there was a time after in about 2008 where we had the subprime crisis meltdown in global markets, and before that we had people coming to us all the time pitching investment ideas that were based on those instruments that caused the big meltdown in the end. And we just couldn't, we were just cutting through and saying, well, what's really behind this? We're just not comfortable with that. We don't understand it. And it's really hard because sometimes the rest of the market or a lot of other people in the market are going, oh, this is great. We can get a bit of extra return, or there's something attractive about this. And it's okay because everyone else is doing it. And sometimes it's really hard to hold your line because your clients might be saying, well, why would we come to you? Because someone else is saying they're getting great returns over there. So it's saying, well, that's fine, but in our view, the risk-adjusted returns aren't that attractive. So I'd also say a lot of times in investing, you don't actually understand all of the risks you're taking, because it's not just about the underlying company you're investing in. It can be about the type of instrument you're investing in. If the company goes wrong, do you actually go in to be able to claim something, or are you just going to get a $0 return? You've got to understand the structure of the investment there. And investment bankers are pretty good at packaging things up to make them look absolutely beautiful, but sometimes they're not so nice.
Absolutely. Now, I mean, obviously, you did mention you were going around, there was teams that you guys were working with, different departments, and all these exposures that you put yourself into. Now, when you then transitioned to your own venture, obviously it was just you, no teams, no people to, rub off of or, share ideas with and things of that nature. And I believe that would have not been a small feat. What were some of the things that you encountered when you started on this journey by yourself?
Yeah, I love talking about this because when you come out of that role, you have a bit of power in that industry, and people like you. They want to take you out to lunch. They want to, be good to you so that you maybe transact with them. So you come out of that role and doing something completely different. You're now a nobody, to be honest. And so you've got to get used to that. And one of the early things I did in my local community when I was trying to figure out what I'd do next, I went to a local volunteering centre and I said, oh, maybe I can be of help. And they said, oh, yeah, go and talk to this community group a bit further south of Wollongong, south of where I live. And to be honest, Prosper, I I didn't quite have the swagger. I probably walked into this community group thinking, I'm such an intelligent guy. I can give them some great ideas and they'll thank me for it, right? And to their credit, they did listen to me, and then they told me what goes on in their business and what they're dealing with day to day. And I walked out of there like a very sad dog with its tail between its legs because I realized I knew nothing about their world. I wasn't familiar with those issues. They were really complex issues. They're issues you couldn't solve by engineering, be it financial engineering or otherwise. They were real issues that people were dealing with, and all these issues were connected. They weren't, homelessness, substance abuse. Once you start package everything up, they're not individually isolated risks. They tend to combine. So I thought, wow, this is interesting. Maybe I can try and start to learn a bit more about that. And the path I went on was trying to knit together, if I can help businesses better understand that world, and also be able to talk to government at the same time, if I can bring the social sector, the governments and businesses together, that would seem to be a great thing because it's pretty clear they all talk different languages most of the time.
And absolutely. I mean, obviously, there's one thing about you being in the investment world. You did paint a picture of you waking up and then communicating with teams in Japan, giving them updates of what's happening and teams everywhere else, you know what I mean? So it sort of made you feel like you had a grasp on a pulse on the pulse of the world and the happenings of it. But these things were actually in your backyard. That must have really humbled you, like you said, tail between your legs and things of that nature. And obviously so many people overlook what's in their backyard and want to look at things that are sort of outside. What did you do with this information then?
Well, adding a bit of complexity to that is that I'd worked in a fairly technically specialized role for many years in investments. And once you come out and try and run your own business, you're doing everything. As you know, you've got to administer the business. You've got to get more business. You've got to deliver the business. You've got to work on the business. And that is, it was a completely different lifestyle to what I was used to. So it meant finding groups who had, peer groups that had those skills and try and learn from them and share and so that we could help each other out. But you're right. It was a completely different way of life. I had no really set concrete plan. It was just go out and see what happens. Eventually found my way, but it took many years to do so. And a lot of the savings I'd made while I was working in my corporate role got whittled down in trying to find, where that, next opportunity really was.
Absolutely. You mentioned obviously having supportive friends and people around you during this transition, because I obviously believe in this endeavor. If you want to go far, you could go alone, but if you want to go further, you go together. How crucial was their support? And what sort of instances did they come good for you?
Yeah. Let me just start that very briefly with just before I left my work corporate role, I was having quite a crisis personally, and I'd never contemplated the idea of seeing someone professionally, like a psychologist, to help with that. But it was a very close friend who was quite open that they had been seeing a psychologist, who gave me the confidence to go, okay, well, maybe it's normal. Maybe that's okay. So there was that. That was a benefit piece from a friendship support before that. Once I went out, I established several peer groups. So one of the groups had about 5 people in it, and over the years we were together for about 12 years, getting together every month, just to sit down for an hour and a half and go through in a semi-structured way. How's your last month been? What are you really stuck on now? And what's the one goal you're going to set yourself for next time we turn up here at our next cafe meeting? So that peer group support was great. Here and there had some one-on-one coaching from certain people, which is fantastic because then it's just really focused on you, or you try and acquire the specific skill that you're after. And then on top of that, I've been part of the Professional Speakers Australia Association, or peak body. for many years. So that association gives you access to, I guess, a much wider peer group, less intimate, but it's a much wider peer group again, and therefore more ideas to exchange, and people help each other out. I mean, the great thing about those types of associations is you're not walking in there as I'm Coles and you're Woolworths. You know, you're walking in there as there's a big pie here. We're not competing head to head on this. We're going to really help each other out.
Absolutely. And good on you for obviously choosing yourself, because I think, when you fly, they usually tell you to put your mask on first,
Yeah.
so that you could be of help to all the other people around you. And had you just kept going in that downward spiral, that wouldn't have been of help to anybody else. And well, you came out of that and you wrote a book, Connecting Profit with Purpose. And it now actually showcases a roadmap for businesses. First of all, what inspired you to write this, and what sort of message can we expect from this book?
Yeah. The real inspiration is about purpose as a topic, because I think my definition of purpose might be different to yours and might be different to everyone watching this podcast, because it is quite a broad concept. We intuitively we get it, we like it, but what is it? So firstly, it's about understanding, what are we talking about? There's purpose at the personal level. What am I trying to achieve in my life and with my family and with my friends? There's purpose in the role if I'm working in a job or running my own business. There's the purpose of that role. Then if you're in a team, what's the purpose of the team? If you're in a company, what's the purpose of the company, and so on. So you've got these different layers, and I think there's a lot of confusion about what purpose means when people just throw it out there and talk about it without identifying, where are we aiming here? But on top of that, the real motivation behind the book was saying you can mix profit and purpose. In a lot of people's minds, they think, well, you're either getting profits or you're trying to do something good, i.e. purpose. But they're actually reinforcing, there's ways of bringing them together, such that not only is a business doing something really good for its community or for society, the business is also growing its earnings by virtue of the fact that it's doing something good. And I think it makes sense that if you're a business and you're delivering something people genuinely need, and you're doing it in a responsible way, you're going to be around for a lot longer than if you're just out there trying to rip someone off. So, I think quite often we think profit or purpose, but I say it's profit and purpose. So the book really collects a whole lot of case studies from companies all around the world, some big, some small, and just shows you how those connections are made. For example, the pig farming business in outback New South Wales that figured out if they go to food manufacturers and get their waste stock. So a food manufacturer, they make a run of pasta, they've got all this leftover raw pasta mix left over. Why don't we truck it to the pig farm? Because that'll cost, I don't know, say $50 a tonne, versus the food manufacturer paying $300 a tonne to go and dump it in a green waste fill site. So the food manufacturer can save money by sending the leftover food to the pig farm. Now that's just an example of where you get a win-win. But there's so many different ways that win-win can work. And that's what I love focusing on. But also just really love focusing on helping leadership teams in organizations and companies understand, well, why do you exist? What's going to drive you and your relevance for not just 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, but 5, 10, 15 and more. And given what's going on in the world today, I think having a lot of clarity around what you really add to society, the value you add, is more important than ever.
Absolutely. And because if you're just going to be spraying and praying out there, people are bombarded with so much noise. And if you can't really showcase why you're relevant to them in that particular moment, then, you've actually wasted your time. And is that also the reason why, because obviously this is not something that can be done in one sitting. You've now created an Impact Hour series where, you're taking people through and helping people just really see the gaps that are in the industry, and the initiatives that people can feel. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, let me tell you first about Impact Hour and then Purpose Ignition. So Impact Hour is a very local forum that with another business partner I run, and we hope to roll that out into other areas in Australia. Excuse me. And what it does is we set a topic, and it allows business people and anyone in the community to come and talk about a sustainability issue and learn about how other businesses are doing it well. So by virtue of people coming along to this event, maybe someone in a business is thinking, oh, maybe I could put solar panels on the roof, but how would I go about that? What's the first thing I would do? Or what challenges might I need to overcome? And if they hear someone else talking about their journey, then it gives them that extra confidence. They'll grow, they learn, they make connections, and it gives them confidence to go forward and maybe do something that they wouldn't otherwise have done. And then in a sort of parallel situation with Caroline Butler-Madden, I run Purpose Ignition. And what Purpose Ignition is about, it's a community of senior leaders in business who are really trying to advance purpose or the focus on core or social purpose in the core of their business. So instead of just thinking about purpose as giving some money to charity or doing a volunteering day, they want to really say what value is our business adding to society, and how do we do that better, and how do we help that drive our profitability. And what you find when you go into larger companies, so medium to large companies, there'll often be one or two people who are thinking this way and really wanting to advance that agenda. And they're not necessarily being stopped by anyone, but the people around them don't really understand what they're trying to do. So we give them an environment where they can come together, people from all different companies, all different organizations, and they can, again, like the Impact Hour idea, Purpose Ignition is helping them understand what other people are doing. It gives them skills, it gives them knowledge, it gives them confidence, and they'll go forward and do things they wouldn't otherwise do.
You know what I like about what you just told us right now? I mean, forgive me if I'm wrong, but you did mention earlier you had a peer group that you would go to, and it was sort of structured in the way that you would talk about stuff that was maybe bothering each and every one of you guys. And I feel like you recreated it, but in a business context with the Impact Hour group. Yep. Did I make that connection correct? Or?
Yeah, and with the Purpose Ignition group, yes, it's a good connection. And I guess I think we're probably alike in the sense that we see, helping each other out and creating a bigger pie is better than trying to fight over an existing piece of a pie. And we love to bring people together to do things better, because that's going to be better for everyone.
Absolutely. And I'm glad we've, made that connection. Now, for businesses that are sort of hesitant maybe to integrate purpose and profit because maybe of beliefs that they already have, or should be all right, mate, or, we've always done things like this around here, and things like that. What sort of compelling reasons would you maybe present to convince them of, the value of combining the two?
Yeah. I'd say the most compelling reason is maybe not the one you'd expect. And it's not so much about customers, it's more about your employees. So people want to work somewhere where they're clear on the direction they're going in, and they're really clear on what's in or out, so they can make better decisions about their business. And they want to be doing something positive. And especially when we look at generational dynamics, younger generations want more positive work than most older generations. So when you have clarity of your social purpose as a business, and then also additional clarity on how that is driving your business forward, and creating an exciting place to be, but also knowing you're doing something that's very valuable for the people or the planet, then the level of engagement from your workforce is going to be super high. And there's a lot of, I could throw statistics around, but you don't want a presentation. There's a lot of data that says when you get that high engagement, companies are more innovative, they're going to be more resilient, they're going to outperform in the longer run, they'll be more open to opportunities. So I think the most compelling reason is that one. It's the employee engagement, inspiration, motivation piece. Because when you're, and I think people like Richard Branson are focused on this, I want to make sure my employees are happy, because when they're happy, the customers are happy. And it's the same idea.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's a statement that says people will only support a wall that they helped to build.
Mm.
And, if the employees are fully engaged, I mean, we were joking around earlier on and saying the last 5 years, so many people were told that their jobs were non-essential. Now, can you imagine going to that job knowing that nobody needs what you're doing? It won't fulfill you, and it won't actually motivate you to want more, be more, and have more. Whereas if you now create that purpose and collaborate it with profit, then people will actually have a reason and tendre to show
Yep.
up in those particular roles. And yes, obviously, if somebody's engaged, innovation happens and it just becomes a snowball effect. But I mean, looking at your track record, Phil, you've been doing things off the beaten path. I mean, I don't know how many of your mates left Tasmania and came over to Australia and started doing whatever they're doing. So many people are really afraid of stepping off the conventional path, things that are set out and laid out for them. How is it then that you maybe guide individuals or maybe organizations in and of themselves to start embracing the unknown, knowing that every 5 years we have a completely different world that we're given to?
Mm. Well, firstly, from a personal perspective, one of my core skills is helping to facilitate conversations between different parties, whether it's management and employees, or it's a business and a community group, or it's someone else in government. That's a core skill for me. So when I'm applying that skill, I don't feel like I'm working. I feel like, this is just great. Life's brilliant, and I'm helping to solve challenges in the world. So when you get that combination, that's great. So really, I live for that. Not everyone has that passion or that skill. That's fine. But I think when we're talking about things changing every 5 years, as a business or as an organization, just being really clear on what you do well and understanding, well, what are the strengths you have and what are the uniquenesses you have that really set you apart from other organizations, and will set you apart for years into the future if you focus on them and do them well. I think just clarity of that purpose and those strengths, it goes a really long way.
Absolutely. Now, for those that have been inspired to find out more about what it is that you do and how you can maybe help them or their organization, what would be the first step for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, my website is philpreston.com.au, and email hello@philpreston.com.au. That'd be great.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that all those show notes all those links are in the show notes there so that people can actually get started on there. Now, you've been a busy man. I mean, dealing with $50 billion investments, trying to raise a family. And speaking of trying to raise a family, you had a bit of an episode with your second child, right?
That's right. Yes. So our first, so we've got two kids. Our first one, our daughter, she was born in a 2 hour labor, and that's pretty, that's pretty short by, I guess, labor standards. So we got to the hospital, and that went fine. With our second child, we were thinking of a home birth, and we had the midwife all lined up. We had candles ready to put around. We had the music tracks we wanted to play. But on a particular night, my wife woke up, I think it was about 11:30 p.m. and and she said, I think I'm going to labor. And then we didn't really have time to get the candles out or the music going, because our son came along 20 minutes later in our bathtub. So I've never been a wicket keeper in cricket, but I sort of had that experience of being able to catch, excuse me, catch my second child as he came out. And it was, what I remember about it, for my wife, she said it was, even though it was short, it was the most intense pain she's ever had. And I just also, from my perspective, I had the easy end of the bargain. Just that adrenaline surge once our son was delivered, was just like, wow, it's like a wave that just washes over you, and it's like a feeling you rarely have in your life.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, congratulations to the both of you. But about the music, Was that any of your own compositions that you had planned to put in there? Because I did find out somewhere you're a singer-songwriter as well, and that must have.
Let's say no. I don't think my music was in there. I was a wannabe singer-songwriter in a progressive folk blues band, and we had fun, but we were never in the top 100. That's for sure. So it was a creative outlet, and in fact, a couple of years before I left my corporate job, I'd started playing in this band, and that was a sign that I needed to do something more creative. It was a bit of a leading indicator of where things would go.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, your life story and your experience, the whole creativity, there's so many intertwining connections. The work that you were doing, your creativity pursuits, and the current work that you're doing in innovation and transformation and things of that nature. And yeah, I really, really appreciate you for taking the time to share this with us, because it's quite relevant for people to actually know how they can sort of work with people like yourself. But obviously, it would be remiss for us to not ask, what's next? You've written books, obviously worked with $50 billion companies, done one of life's miracles, delivered a baby. What's next for Phil?
Well, I'm a middle-aged white guy, and but I'm not retiring anytime soon. I'm going to keep building on that business, and my business partner and I are doing the purpose ignition programs and forums. We're only just getting started on that, so we're creating an underground movement of leaders who are really serious about making a huge impact in their own organisations and in Australia and the world. So we're going to be building that and fueling that in the years ahead.
Absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough for sharing your transformative journey with us. I mean, your story really underscores the profound impact when one aligns, their work with a deeper purpose. Do you know what I mean? So many people don't have that opportunity. And thank you so much for showing us what's possible.
Yeah, oh, look, it's a real privilege to come on your show, so I appreciate it. And look, my purpose is to turn ripples into waves of positive change.
Absolutely. And for those that are watching right now, if Phil's insights resonated with you, maybe consider how integrating purpose into your own endeavors can actually lead to both personal fulfillment and your own professional success, because that disconnect with so many people doing things that they absolutely don't like while waiting for the weekend to celebrate and do the things that they love is the disconnect that creates a lot of suffering amongst a lot of people. And also, if the show resonated with you today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show for more enlightening conversations. Because in our next episode, from what I've just gathered, we're going to be exploring ideas to cultivate a happier existence. And if you know anyone that could actually benefit from today's conversation, why don't you share this episode with them? It could be the little bit of purpose that you can actually do with your life. Now, let's continue to inspire and support each other on our paths to prosperity. Bye for now.